having real conversations with our clients is one of the great things that I get to do. I love talking to them, learning about why they came to us in the first place, what their experience has been working with one of our remote executive assistants, what challenges they could be facing, and how are we going to move forward together. These are some of the topics that I typically bring up in my conversations with clients, and then I share those here on our podcast and also on our YouTube channel. And so here is another one of those conversations with Jeff Ruetty, who is the owner of a company called Upheld, and enjoy the conversation.
My name is Jeff Ruetty, and my wife and I own a company called Upheld, and we build custom residential and commercial furniture, as well as do residential and commercial furniture reupholstery. And so we are in Columbus, Ohio. We have 20 to 25 employees and a handful of contractors that we work with as well.
And what prompted our first conversation? Why did we start talking?
So a friend of mine also works with you, and this friend is very frugal. And so I was surprised to hear that he was investing in an assistant and was so positive about it. And so I thought, gosh, if this guy's doing it, then I should do it. And I read a book and started thinking about, and started doing basically an audit of where I'm spending my time, and started to see like the opportunity cost of the amount of time I was spending on administrative tasks. And then also, and I think one of the things I've been surprised by is like the level of competence is well above, at least for my assistant, Heather, is well above administrative tasks. So her ability to manage projects, like we rebranded the company, and she managed a lot of that project, and we're setting up company benefits, and she's managing a lot of that project. And so I sort of reduced the role in my mind to email and calendar, and administrative type things. But I would say that's like less than half of what my assistant does with me. So anyway, that's why. And I think it was, I always looked at it as a cost, and I'm still learning how to look at the opportunity cost of my time, of where I could be adding value, and not just time, but also energy. And so that's kind of what brought us to this point.
Yeah, that's awesome to share. As you were describing that, you're talking about, the initial thought was email, calendar, which is the traditional thinking, really, when you're talking about this sort of thing, right? That's the lowest rung on the ladder. It's the easiest thing to let go of for most people, although email is pretty difficult to let go of for a lot of people. But just those sorts of tasks. So when you bring into the equation the ability to do much more, it unlocks more of your brain in the use case of what you can actually accomplish with working with something like other. Yeah. Tell me though, what if you were to kind of look at the scope of things that she's helped you with, she's assisting you with, what's the best thing? What's been the best thing that she's worked on?
It's a good question. So we have a new partnership that we've built. So I'd say two things. One is the rebranding. So just coordinating across different agencies and vendors for signage, window graphics, graphic design, website, all that kind of thing. And just her coordination and keeping those things moving when, we had basically delayed rebranding for a year and a half because I didn't do it. And that's like one of the biggest things that we need to grow our business was to rebrand. And so I would say just her carrying that across the line. The second would be, we have a new relationship with a pretty big company that it's a very different way of working for our business. And the staff that we have is really familiar with the customers that we have and the segments that we have, and did not have the bandwidth to do something new, because they have this frame of reference of like, this is how we do things. And I knew that this new client that we had was going, that the basics of the work, the cushions that we make, are going to be the same, but the way in which it happens is going to feel really different to everybody. And so I decided to just keep it and manage it with a small group of people. But I couldn't have done that because there's a lot of administrative stuff with it. There's a lot of, I mean, we go from pricing one project to now pricing like 70 different models of a high-end RV camper, and needing to do all of that. So what Heather did was she learned the language, and she integrated, worked directly with the client, and then did a great job of setting up systems where we used Google Drive, Google Docs, Monday.com, and she like created process and system in a digital way that allowed, me and my team and Heather to work with the client to deal with a lot of complexity, because this we have a lot that we're doing with this particular client, but there's one program that we launched that they had wanted to do for 5 years, but they couldn't find anyone dumb enough to like take on the complexity of doing it, to basically use, I mean, now we're up to like 100 like manufacturing spec documents, and as like templates to build out custom cushions for a cushion replacement program for the, for all the models that they've sold over the past 25 years. And so it's something they've really wanted to do. It's a big opportunity. So I was like, okay, well, we'll give it a shot. We'll try anything. And so she really helped bring structure to that, and helped me execute it. Because if it was just me, it'd be me like in my car at night at soccer practice, trying to get as much done as I can on my Wi-Fi hotspot, and so, just her staying on top of that has been, she continues to, but she's, it was really, really good.
Wow. I mean, that's a pretty big process, or at least a pretty big project to trust someone with. How has the trust been built since the beginning? Like, what was the progress there?
So, probably one of my biggest learnings is like, I am the most difficult part of the process. And so like, I actually tried to spend more time making sure that Heather trusted me, because she was like, I felt like right out of the gate, she was inherently trustworthy in that she did everything she said she was going to do, but she also like thought of multiple things without me asking. And so like, and I look at trust in terms of, in two aspects of character and competence. And so her competence was super clear right out of the gate. And then her character, I felt like, just from what I heard from my friend about you and your business, that you hire for character, whereas other firms, virtual assistants, like they're probably more focused on a baseline competency, and not that they don't care about character, but you seem to emphasize it. And so I would say there was a strong inherent trust, and then it just grew from there. And like I said, most of what I was worried about was that she would, because I mean, when I ask her to do something, she does it immediately and then thinks of the next 3 things she should do. But then when it's time for me to do something, she has to ask me to do it 3 times, and I only do half of it. So I try to be self-aware, and I also try to give her a lot of like, like, hey, I need you to tell me if there's something I'm doing. So anyway, the trust that part was pretty easy. I just want to make sure I didn't drive her crazy. And I
No,
don't think she would tell me if I did, but you know, we'll see.
no, I like um, how you're like, I'm the hardest part of this equation, which is generally true for leaders, right? Because
Yeah.
it's hard to like go of specific things, or it's hard to know which things to let go.
True.
There's a
You know,
lot of gray area in there when you're just starting out with someone. Like, okay, how's this gonna go? How are we gonna get this facilitated? We try to make that as easy as possible, but there's still going to be some challenges of trying to figure out, and leaders are different. So there could be something that you spend time on that you bring a lot of value to, that if another leader was in your position, it would just drain them so much, and they would need to
yeah.
get rid of that so they could manage their energy, their focus better. So it's
Right.
very
Yeah.
specific to each leader. So yeah, what would you advise? So you had a friend who invested, you heard about it, you're like, you're really frugal. This is surprising to me. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Maybe I ought to. Like, let's say you were the friend who was really frugal, and somebody came up to you and said, why are you doing this? I've been thinking about this, but what made you kind of jump into that? What would you tell them?
Um, I would say I would encourage them to think bigger about the vision for their business, but also like the value of their time. Because I think that like what I've noticed, a lot of my peers and it's still myself included, really undervalue um, that opportunity cost of my time. Um, and I would encourage them to just toe dip. Like,
Hmm.
so I think I've observed that people will talk about it and think about it and say, I should, and every month or so, they're like, I really should look into that. Then they don't. And so I would just push them to say, like, why don't you just, like, you don't have to decide right now if you're going to hire an assistant. Why don't you just take a call? And I think the first call that you and I had was like, I was like, I'm sure everybody you talk to at first is a little bit skeptical, not in that it wouldn't be nice. Like it's obviously like it feels like a luxury, to have an assistant. It feels like a luxury. Um, and it feels like something that people with bigger businesses than mine should have. Like I have this perception that like, it's something that someone way more successful and established has, not me. And so I had to kind of get over some of that and then think about like, all right, all I'm committing to is just taking an intro call to find out like how much does something like this cost? Is it doable? Um, and then also try to think about like, okay, if I had this much more time, I basically look at it as like, if I have let's just use a rough number because I don't know if you're going to, publish any of this, but like, let's say I spend $2,500 a month on a virtual assistant and my products have a 50% gross margin, can I sell $5,000 worth of our services in the time that I make up this? And,
Right.
if you want to look at it on a net margin, if you have a 15 to 20% net margin, like, okay, can I sell $10,000 worth of our services every month with the time that is free, the time and energy that's freed up? And can I create more value? And so that was really what caused me to think like, all right, there's a cost benefit analysis. And then and then the agreement was like, yeah, let's just give it a shot and see how it goes. Because if it doesn't work, then we'll just stop. It's not it's not a 5-year commitment. It's not a transaction, that you take lightly, but it is something that if it doesn't work, then you can stop. So anyway, that's what I would say to someone.
Cool. Yeah. And yeah, we'll publish your number that you are throwing out in this fictitious scenario, but our ranges are wide, like in terms of starting very small
Yeah.
and scaling up. So there's a whole
Right.
plethora of ways that could go. But as you're talking, I was thinking about how a lot of people leaders don't value their time.
Mm-hmm. True.
So what they do is they take on a lot themselves because they can just do it. I can just do it. It takes me 5 minutes. It takes me 15 minutes. I could just do that once a day, this once a day or whatever. And so there's little chunks of time that all these administrative things take up. But then also there's brain share of what is occupying your brain while you're doing those things or while you have to focus on those things.
Right.
I think about our home. Like our home is a lot like homes in America. Like we have a pool guy, we have a bug guy, we've got lawn care, and we do splurge for deep clean once a month.
Yeah.
Like we have all these services that we pay for.
Yep.
In reality, we could do all these things ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We could do all these things ourselves and save all that money.
Yeah.
However, how much time, energy, and focus would that take away from what else we could do with that same time? And could we, basically what you're saying is, what's the cost benefit analysis? Could we make more in that time? Could we have greater value, create greater value with our time?
Yeah.
We paid someone else to do that. It's the same thing with this. We're just trying to unleash leaders to create greater value with their time.
Yeah.
While they're paying someone else to do some of these other things. Yeah.
I struggle a lot with like the scarcity mindset versus the abundance mindset. And so I just keep thinking like, if I really embrace an abundance mindset that like there's more than enough to go around, that's when I feel good about the decision to have an assistant, because I believe that there's just a lot more out there for me to go, a lot more business for me to go find. But if I'm spending all my time in this like reactive mode, which dealing with administrative tasks like pulls your mindset down into like a transactional reactive space, makes it even harder to get into like the strategic long-term space. And so, I mean, it's a daily fight between like scarcity and abundance. My nature is to think about scarcity. So anyway, I think that's been a mindset that's been helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Have you heard about or read the book Buy Back Your Time?
Yeah, that's part of what's started it, like my conversation with my friend, and then the time and energy on it through that book was I'd say fairly illuminating, and I probably should do it again, because I think there's what I've been thinking about recently is like, okay, I don't know how long we've been doing this, maybe 6 months, maybe a little longer, but like there's another level of and productivity is not the right word. It's really like there's another level of impact that I could have or return on my time. And so I should probably do a time and energy audit again. And see like, how has it changed? And now there's just a different set of problems that I probably need to reevaluate and say like, all right, what's the next? And that's what Heather and I worked on is we started with like, and we did a lot of iteration of like, all right, we're going to try this for a week and see how it goes. And she's going to give me feedback, and I'm going to observe and give feedback. And then we would iterate and adjust as we go. And so we just kept trying like new levels of integration is what I would call it, like new levels of integration of Heather into my like workflow and our business and everything like that. And so I really want to like keep working on those things. and finding new and different ways to free myself up. And then there's also there's the pressure after you do that to make sure like, okay, you got to make it work with that extra time, and that extra energy. So
Absolutely. I really like that you're thinking about doing a time and energy audit. Again, I think ideally someone's doing this quarterly, at a minimum once a year, right? Just to continually refine, because there's a creep of complication that's happening. There's a creep of, new things that you're adding to your plate just because it's a new part of the business or a new process or something. And to continually kind of come back to that is really, really helpful. It keeps everything on the rails.
yeah,
That'd be my recommendation anyways.
yeah, quarterly is good. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you think I ought to know, or anybody else who's considering something like this ought to know that we haven't briefly chatted about here?
I just would, I think I said this, I'll just reiterate this, that a lot of people think about this, but don't take action on it because it has to do with something very personal, which is themselves and like an inherently low value of self. And so sometimes it's difficult because the alternative means like a high view of self that is prideful. And so like that is not good. But the low value of self isn't good. And it's a really tricky like way to think of, it's something I constantly struggle with of like, oh, am I worth investing in? You know what I mean? And is my time worth that? And it feels prideful and arrogant to think differently. And so I would just challenge people to like take a step back and think like, what does it look like to have like to live life abundantly? And like what are my goals for my life? And then challenge myself to think like, okay, well maybe I am worth investing in because my time is and then maybe think about like all the people that depend on me and that sort of thing as a way to motivate taking like one small first step, and moving off the bench of something that you're going to think about and just toe dip, just try it, just have an intro call, just do something, like ask a friend who has one how it's going. Because I know people, like for me, it was maybe a year that I just thought about it, and I have friends who've thought about it for multiple years and have never done anything.
Well, yeah, but I think that's great advice. I would say personally, for me, when we started this, we had a couple of clients, and I felt personally, we're not big enough for me to have an assistant. But then it came to the point where I was like, I have to have, even if I don't think I need one, I have to have one to drink from the same well that all my clients are drinking from. I have to, by principle, have an assistant. And it's been a game changer.
Yeah.
That's what has allowed us to grow. And it's been huge to have that. I've before a couple of years ago, which I've had an assistant for a number of years, but before a couple of years ago, I had never taken in my life an unplugged vacation.
Yeah.
Never. I've just never been in a job or situation where I could. And then after having an assistant and having that comfortable nature of, okay, they have eyes on stuff. So if something comes in that's really needs attention, she will take care of it. That was absolute game changer. Having that. So yeah, I appreciate that. And going from 0 to 1 on anything is the hardest, right? So just going from thinking about it to actually doing something about it,
Anything. Yeah.
always the hardest. But once you get the momentum, just starting to take an action, discovery, or, figure out pricing or figuring out how this works, it unlocks the brain and it starts to unlock how this could possibly benefit, you beyond just thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, the problem is our brain reward us even when we just think about something.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I think about exercising. My brain's like, good job.
Right. Unfortunately,
it.
you get there's not some health benefits. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really important step to take. Just discovery. Yeah. Well, I know this has been helpful for me to just hear from you about your experience so far with Header. And I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. I hope to help many, many more leaders unlock the benefits of having an executive assistant, and just thank you for being a part of the process here and allowing us to share.
You bet. Yeah. And thank you. As you cleared up, I'm glad you did this. I feel like I should do this with clients. It's a good idea.
And then you should end it with, is there anyone else I should be helping that you know?
Yeah. There are some people, and I will think about it, and you can follow up an email. And I've got someone in mind that I'm going to text and say, like, would you be open to taking an initial call? And just see, because there are some people who I know are like on the fence.
Yeah, for sure. And part of my posture towards those calls is here to serve, not to sell. So I'm just trying to help someone discover if we're the best fit for them. And if we're not, I'm going to be honest about that. Because I really want to make sure it's good for everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thanks.
Well, thank you. And, we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
You heard it there at the end. I asked Jeff, who else do you know who needs a remote executive assistant? And maybe that person is you. Maybe you don't know him, but maybe it's you. Maybe you need one. Please reach out. If that's true of you, you can go to our website, dreamsupport.club, and there are plenty of ways to reach out to us on the social medias and from the website and from the landing pages. So hopefully we connect soon. God bless.